Welcome to episode number 4 of the Future of Leasing in Latin America, anchored in its past and present. Today we are going to start a series of episodes that are going to examine from a granular standpoint each of the countries and regions of Latin America and how they can take advantage of its natural conditions and human conditions in order to drive economic development using equipment leasing and financing. First one is going to be Mexico. Mexico, we can call Mexico the North American hinge, is in a way the door that takes us to the largest market of the Americas, and it has been playing that role over the years. Main highlights of this is that its border is 3,140 kilometers with the United States and is bound to the US by the North American Free Trade Agreement, whatever the name is today. And to the point that today 80% of Mexican exports go to the United States. This has been good, but it's also a fragility, and we're going to see that a little bit further. Nearshoring wave started after the pandemic, when the world realized that we needed to have a shorter supply chain, supply and sources, and that Mexico is the perfect example of that. And that has created permanent migration from a lot of remote suppliers into the closest market, which is Mexico. But we'll see that this is also the vocation of the rest of the Americas, the rest of Latin America. So we can consider that the Mexican leasing demand has been tied to industrial build-out in North America. And that's the reason why we are so concerned when after Liberation Day, a lot of uncertainties started to happen. It is important to observe that Mexico actually has two Mexicos. There is the most developed Mexico, which is the north, and Bajío, which has a global platform, is highly sophisticated, very modern. It has a very important industrial base, which is the fourth largest auto exporter, top aerospace cluster, one of the largest in the electronic industry, and is concentrated in the north of Mexico and Querétaro. So we can get Monterrey, Saltillo, Querétaro, Guadalajara, and other cities in the border with the United States. And then you have the South, which is a different country, closer to Central America in many aspects, cultural, economic, and so on, but especially in income and infrastructure. And clearly the industrial boom of the North has not yet arrived to the South, albeit the South has a tremendous future. And one of the main issues in the future of the whole continent is the interoceanic corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, which is a rail route, an industrial park spine that connects the Pacific Ocean through the port of Salina Cruz to the Atlantic Ocean to the port of Coatzacoalcos in the state of Veracruz, which is very, very important for the future and for an alternative theory of the country. So Mexico has some structural constraints that also become opportunities for the leasing business. Energy is one of them. Electricity supply and reliability is constrained, and that's the reason why it is very important. And there are many projects that we have been sponsoring and leading in the clean energy side. Water, this is very important. The North Industrial has a chronic potential shortage of water, so it's important to start working in enriching that and making some investment in the field. There are technologies that facilitate the recovery of water. Security is a big issue. Certain issues like the derecho de piso that has been charged by cartels to multinationals is one challenge, and security is another area, which, by the way, can also be mitigated with investment that can be facilitated through leasing. There is leasing of security in many countries. We have sponsored, for example, in Kenya, leasing for the police cars, You can also lease drones to surveillance for the public police and military and so on. So this is another alternative that can work. The most important probably is the field of the rule of law. We need to really to drive a transformation of the rule of law, and this conception of excessive more formalism that I mentioned in last episode is something that we need to really try to remove from Mexican mindset and a practical application. There is, of course, a big concern after the last reform that created the judicial popular election of judges, which doesn't precisely reward competency, but rather political abilities. So, and now all this model has been challenged by tariff friction and by the kind of challenge to the review of the North American Trade Agreement, the USMCA, by the United States. They recently sent a kind of nasty message to Mexico saying, okay, we are going to expand the treaty, but not for many times. I reserve my right to withdraw. So we'll see what happens, and of course that creates a lot of uncertainty. And because of that, it's time to invite the Mexican entrepreneurs to think about alternatives. You have options. You cannot be fragile with this dependence of 83% of your trade to the United States. You can be anti-fragile, and you can really start to use your options. Where are your options? Well, they are anchored in something that comes from many, many years of history. Number one, the access to the two oceans. Number two, the fact that the dependence on the United States is basically a distortion of policy, because if you look at the history in the past, Mexico has a tremendous strategic importance in the new Belt and Road Initiative, for example, for China, and also in integration with Europe. It can be, again, as it was in the 16th and 17th century, the hub of communication between Asia and Europe. So there are, of course, different levers that invite to diversify. There are free trade agreements already in force with Mexico and other countries. And of course, again, these transismus logistics corridors are very, very important because they create a tremendous potential to diversify the economy. So I think that Mexico can pivot from being a bilateral assembly plant to be a diversified global node, bridging the two oceans and connecting everywhere. And what that means in practical terms, what can be done, for example, with Asia? Well, if you move from this passive nearshoring destination into a sophisticated global chain partner with Asia, especially with China, you can, for example, implement dual sourcing free trade zones, like the ones that exist today in Manzanillo and Lázaro Cárdenas. You can co-invest with India in high technology. Remember that the electronic industry in Mexico is highly sophisticated, and the Indians have very, very strong software industries and talent in that. You can start creating or dealing with an alternative monetary currency because the dollar sooner or later is going to start cracking because of everything that is happening globally. So a yuan peso clearing system could be a good idea to start. It's not going to replace the dollar. It's very difficult for now to replace the dollar, but it's going to set the basis to be less fragile vis-a-vis the neighbor of the north. Strict rules of origin will certainly protect what Mexico can do with Asia vis-a-vis its relationship with its main trading partner, in particular the United States. Because we are not telling that you need to close the deal with the United States. It's just reduce your dependence on the United States. And start a lot of cultural, academic, and industrial alliances that are going to enrich technology and the creation of technology within the country. Vis-a-vis Europe, as I mentioned, I mean, the potential is to be again what it was Mexico during the 16th and 17th century and even 18th and 19th century, with this now China that used to happen in the past, where Mexico was the conduit to communicate trade between Europe, the Spanish Empire, and China. And in that connection, there are many things that can be developed There is already a modernized global agreement with the European Union, recently signed, that is going to create a dual corridor between the North America Trade Agreement and Europe, agri-food logistics hubs, where certainly certain areas like Veracruz and Altamira are going to be able to provide cold chain corridors to export food to Europe. A special investment court system that will improve the rule of law, decarbonization subsidies that can align industrial parks with the European Union Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and geographic indications where you can, for example, take advantage of the high value of origin denominations like tequila and mezcal. Leasing can participate a lot with that. We can syndicate, deal with European companies to develop facilities where Europeans have interest. We can also deal with European vendors, original equipment manufacturers, to expand the trade, especially in technology and applied technology and equipment. We can really partner with advanced players in the decarbonization technologies that the Europeans have many of them. And leasing of decarbonization equipment and technology could be one of the areas of development. And we can also provide logistics financing for tequila and mezcal manufacturers. Another very important point, integration with the South. There is already an Alianza del Pacífico, Pacific Alliance, that created an interesting area that has not been very well exploited between Mexico, Chile, Colombia, and Peru. And I think that there are other countries that are currently trying to expand it, but nobody has paid too much attention to that. I invite you to do that, to think about how we can expand intra-regional trade, which is one of the lessons that we learned in reviewing history. Intra-regional trade was not something that we developed very well. Let's use the Tehuantepec logistics corridor as an alternative to the Panama Canal. I don't mean that the Panama Canal needs to be ignored, but the point is, as we are going to see in the corresponding episode, the Panama Canal has certain challenges, so we need to start building an alternative, and the alternative is already built, is the Tehuantepec logistics corridor. So let's use that and let's try to connect to that. We need to integrate our energy. Mexico can provide refined products from petroleum, gasoline in particular. They need to improve a little bit investment in technology. That can be done also through leasing. And of course, we need to eliminate the non-tariff barriers, and in particular, we need to improve sanitary and phytosanitary controls. So again, leasing and technology lease can be an important point here. With the Middle East and Africa, very simple. Mexico can develop halal certified agribusiness hubs. As we mentioned, in the north, there is a very strong agro industry. Create alliances with Africa in sector specifics is another field of development, because Africa is the continent of the future. There could be some wealth fund partnerships, especially with the rich countries of the Middle East, and create joint hubs for commerce. So there are many things that it can be done. I mean, in peace times, Dubai has a wonderful commodities exchange that could be a big lever for agriculture from Mexico. And if we create alliances with African leasing companies and Middle East leasing companies, and also create a funding mechanism with the Middle East and Southern Asia, this is going to be very, very positive. So the leasing dimension for Mexico provides asset finance in areas like, well, number one, as we have, we're going to see in our Latin American conference in Mexican, Mexico is number 2 in Latin America in terms of size of the industry and development after Brazil. But Mexico has this potential still that is hungry of capital that can be deployed through leasing in the Pacific and Atlantic gateways. Is certainly one of the vectors for the development of interregional commerce, and it provides the possibility to really become less dependent on the neighbor of the north. So this is in general what is being offered by Mexico and what we learned from the past. And with that, I thank you very much for watching this chapter, and I invite you to episode number 5 very, very soon. Thank you very much.